We avatars know that you humans sometimes struggle with understanding our world of the metaverse, Bitcoin and blockchain, and how it impacts you. So up next is one of Old Mutual's own, Hal George of Old Mutual Investment Group.
Was that meant to be me? Okay, let's hope they're better than that in the metaverse. I wasn't expecting that. Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon. It's been that kind of day. Good afternoon. Hope you had a good lunch. I hope the morning's been good. We've got 40 minutes together, and we're going to talk about the metaverse and blockchain and crypto, and it feels kind of a strange time to be doing it. Because as you may have noticed, crypto is going through a bit of a crash right now. So it may be that this will be a waste of time. Because crypto will go promptly to zero. We can all get on with our lives. I think I'll make the case that it's not going to do that. And I'll make the case that the ecosystem around it is strong enough now to survive these kinds of market dips, and the ecosystem will be something which is part of our lives and relevant to us in the future, both from a personal point of view, work point of view, and an investing point of view. So I'm going to go through a few slides and just it's kind of a run-through reminder, if you like, about what we're dealing with. And I'm going to start kind of at the end, which is with the metaverse. So this is a screenshot of what the metaverse looks like. Has anyone been in the metaverse? I'm going to guess no one. Has anyone been there? No. Oh, two. Wow. Okay, cool. Was it good? Clunky, yeah? Okay, we're not going to go there. There's no mics. But thank you for putting your hands up. So metaverse right now is pretty clunky. And to be clear in terms of what the metaverse is, it is a digital world which is inhabited by avatars like mine you just saw, and this gentleman. And you can wander around the metaverse, go to art galleries and go to shops and buy things and go to casinos and gamble. And you can do that today pretty much. And you get views like this. So this is an art gallery in, I'm guessing, Decentraland actually, with a view out over the lake, and this chap's wandering around the art gallery, and he'll have a thing on. He'll be looking at all the artworks. So that's why people buy artworks in the metaverse. Just to get your attention, yeah, these are kind of screenshots of what the metaverse might look like. You can buy real estate in the metaverse. I've bought some real estate in the metaverse. We'll see how that goes. Small amounts of money, I have to tell you. No, just a little option. This is an example of real estate you can buy in the metaverse. This is Mars 4, which is one of the metaverses, which is, if you look it up, the entirety of the planet Mars has been mapped, and you can buy real estate on it. This is a lot which went for $500,000 on Mars. Quite an early sale. And some proud owners put a swimming pool in and this, that, and the other. You can go to concerts in the metaverse. And just to be clear, this is you with those kind of big clunky things on, yeah, in your sitting room, kind of dancing around, kind of looking like a total idiot. But you're in this world. And that whole clunkiness is going to change. It'll go from those big things to contact lenses, on implant, whatever it is. I'll click into the metaverse. So don't get clunked out, because that's what mobile phones looked like when they first came out, and no one's going to use those because they're too clunky. You can dance in your concert, and many famous artists are now performing in the metaverse. And the joy about it is that you can perform to millions and millions of people. So these artists will clock between $20 and $30 million per concert in ticket sales. So this is massive now. And our kids, you know, they're going to these things. This is for young kids. This is Roblox. This is the Roblox metaverse. And chatting to some friends of mine, after school, they're 9-year-old girls. They don't go out and play. They put their headsets on and go into Roblox. And they meet their friends in Roblox, and they chat, and they play games, and they kind of chat and a bit more, and whatever they do, and wander around and buy things, and they buy dresses and clothes, and that's literally what they do every night. So he buys them not whatever physical presents, he buys them Roblox currency, R-O-B-O-X currency, which they can then spend in their metaverse. This is one of the more convincing ones. This is Decentraland. This is where I've bought a little bit of real estate. And this is an area where Sotheby's, for example, have bought real estate and set up an art gallery. Snoop Dogg is there. Many famous celebrities are there. And you can buy real estate at the bottom. So these are the parcels you can buy. It's priced in Ethereum, you'll notice. This will become important a bit later. Everything's traded in Ethereum in the metaverse. Okay? At the top are NFTs. We'll talk about non-fungible tokens. I think everyone knows what NFTs are now. Is that right? Or shall I explain it again? Explain it again? Happy to. So this, 100 Rand. That's fungible, okay? You could have the same thing. It looks exactly the same. It's fungible. Once I give it to you, you own it. It looks exactly like yours. A non-fungible token is a unique ownership thing, okay? NFT, non-fungible token. And what they've done, let's take this cap, that cap on the left, hash key cap. That has a unique identity as defined in the blockchain. And once you pay for it, you own it. That is the only cap of its type. Okay? I know it's digital, I know it's just lines of code, but don't forget all your cash is digital. We don't actually carry cash anymore apart from this bit. It's all digital. The whole world is digital now. So you can say, well, I don't really own that cap. Well, you don't really own your money then. So that's just lines of code as well. So these are lines of code, and the lines of code are immutable, they are unalterable, and they live on the blockchain. And that is your cap. Okay, NFTs is the genius which makes metaverse work. It means that Nike, this blew me away, and I double-checked the quote. The chief executive of Nike, one of the biggest sports clothes, sneakers makers in the world. The CEO of Nike said, by 2025, he thinks 40% of Nike sales will be NFTs. Okay, digital caps, digital sneakers. Not online e-commerce nonsense, NFTs in the metaverse. 40% of Nike sales, he thinks, in 3 years' time. It's unbelievable. So this thing really is, I know you're all sitting there, yeah, sure, it's happening. It is really happening. And this is kind of the closest any of us will have got to this kind of thing, I suspect. This is Facebook's Horizon workroom. This is the Facebook metaverse. Facebook, as you may recall, the day after my webinar, changed their name from Facebook to Meta. The day after my metaverse webinar. I was so excited. And Facebook is now Meta, and they have 20,000 programmers deployed to make metaverse a reality. And they're spending $10 billion a year on it. So that's going to happen. And in our workspace now, instead of doing this, we're generally on a screen. You know, we're talking to each other. And the metaverse is simply, you're stepping into the screen. You're just in the screen. I'm almost in the screen as it is when I'm talking to people now. It's just such an intimate experience. So this kind of a workplace collaboration thing where we sit as avatars and collaborate is very close. This is going to happen quite quickly, I think, in the next couple of years for sure. So one real-life thing is that you will see your clients in this kind of forum. As opposed to a Teams meeting, you'll click on whatever it is, and you'll become your avatar, and you will sit around a table like these people are doing to meet with your clients. And then if you want to buy a NFT, this is the thing which really put it on the map. This is something called Everydays, which is the first 5,000 days. It's by an artist called Mark Winkelmann, otherwise known as Beeple, who is a 55-year-old chap who's been putting a piece of digital artwork online every day for the last 13 years. If you Google Beeple and look at his work, it's actually really good. I must say, I don't know how he does it every day. It's quite extraordinary. These are his first 5,000 pieces in one. And a chap from Singapore who is an NFT entrepreneur and made a fortune in it paid $69 million for this at Sotheby's. And you can watch the auction. The auction was filmed, and dear old Mark Winkelmann, with his mum and his daughters, were watching this auction. And he'd never sold anything like this before. And it goes from $1 million. Oh, come on, it's $1 million. It's like $3 million, $5 million. And in the last minute of trading, it went from like $5 million to $69 million. And the family went, a little berserk. It's actually very amusing to watch. And this will be shown, is probably being shown in the metaverse, in an art gallery, and you will pay to go and see it. In the same way you pay to go to the Louvre to see the Mona Lisa. And the great thing about it, don't forget, 69 million sounds like a lot, yeah? The thing about the metaverse is that you hit the entirety of the global audience all at once. There is no limit to the capacity of how many you can get into your gallery. So he's going to get his money back pretty quick on this, I'd wager. Oh, this was one of the first NFTs. This is Jack Dorsey. His first tweet, he sold for $2.5 million. That's a original of his first tweet. I'm not so keen on that. I quite like the artwork. Okay, so that's enough on the metaverse. How am I doing for time? What time did I start? Was it 1? Yeah? Was it 1? 1:05. Okay, 15 minutes in. Cool. Right, metaverse, big deal. It's going to happen. It's going to affect all our lives. We're going to be in the metaverse. The investment implication of the metaverse, before I get to blockchain, is, before I forget it, you're going to think about the metaverse as another layer of GDP. Okay, you've got physical GDP, what the economy spends every year, and then you're going to have digital spending in another layer of GDP. So what's going to happen is you're going to get a shift of wealth and money flows from physical into digital. So that's going to have an effect on the way we look at the world and the way we invest, as well as your daily lives. Right, blockchain, a Bitcoin reminder, and blockchain. So people get very confused with what blockchain is, because it's a slightly ethereal concept. It's a difficult one to get your head around. If you're struggling, I would recommend reading, as ever, the original source material. Okay, not what people are saying about it, but the original source. And this is the original source. This is the only 9 pages, white paper, put out by Satoshi Nakamoto, which is a pseudonym, and he's never been found, which describes what Bitcoin is. He just invented it. And this describes what Bitcoin is. So have a read. It's a good read, and not a simple read, but it's a straightforward read. And this is how Bitcoin works and how blockchain works. Okay, this is kind of like, how can I describe it? These days, we don't think about how our mobile phones work, or how it works. It just works, and it's transforming my life. We're now learning how blockchain is working. We won't care in 5 years' time. It just will run our lives. But let's understand it first. So, blockchain is transaction dependent. From the top left, kind of round, some requested transaction. The requested transaction is broadcast to a peer-to-peer network. So that's just computers talking to each other, okay, independently. Consisting of computers known as nodes. Those are your nodes. Can you read this? Is it okay? The peer-to-peer network of nodes validates the transaction. Okay, these are just algorithms humming in the background to validate the transaction across independent computers. And the user status using known algorithms. Okay, so if I want to sell this to you, I will describe that transaction in computer code, and that will get validated by you, you, and you. And it'll be using known algorithms as opposed to making stuff up. And once it's done, once verified, coming down to the middle bit there, once verified, the transaction is combined with other transactions to create a new block of data. So that gets made into a block, okay, of data. The transaction is the block of data. The blockchain is a chain of blocks. Okay? So let's say the thing is what we're trading with each other today. I've just sold you that. You want to sell your water to him. You're going to sell your glass to her. Those are our transactions, and those transactions will be stored in a new block, which is called Old Mutual, whatever, Century City Convention. That'll be your block of transactions. That'll then sit with other blocks and create the chain of transactions across the last week, whatever it is. That's a blockchain. Okay? Transactions complete. The other way we could do it is that we could have a physical contract. I could write down, I'm going to sell you this for this, and you agree, you're going to sign it. Instead of legal contracts, there is a blockchain. Blockchains facilitate transactions. That's all it does. The important bit, for these blockchains to work, the currency of the transaction is the cryptocurrency associated with that transaction. Okay? So you don't pay me cash, you pay me Bitcoin. Because those cryptocurrencies live in that blockchain environment. Otherwise, I'd have to transfer dollars into it. Okay? That's really important because as blockchain rolls out, more transactions are done, therefore more cryptocurrency is needed to do them. It's like money supply. Okay? That's why Ethereum, which is the cryptocurrency which backs up currently 90% of blockchain transactions, is Ethereum. Okay? Ethereum dominates, forget Bitcoin, so it's actually a waste of time. Ethereum dominates blockchain transactions, which are what blockchain transactions are going to transform our world, and Ethereum backs them all. Okay? The more transactions there are, the more Ethereum is needed. Okay? So the more Ethereum is needed, the more Ethereum is around. So its value goes up. Okay, so Ethereum today is $300 billion at the latest price, give or take, $300 billion. So 0.3 of a trillion dollar. Global GDP today is $100 trillion. Okay? Ethereum is 0.3 of a trillion dollars. So if I'm right, and blockchain starts to take over, based on Ethereum, Ethereum's not going to be 0.3 of a trillion dollar. It's going to be like $5 trillion because we just need more of it. So your 0.3 goes to 5. Happy days, you get like an 8-bagger. Your investment goes up 8 times. It's interesting now, isn't it? Okay. The way you, and I'll go to this slide first actually, the way you create cryptocurrencies, you can't just create them kind of out of nowhere. You have to have computing power to create them. And you solve puzzles, put simply, using your computers, which are these things. So this is a typical Bitcoin mine. Could be an Ethereum mine, whatever it is. This is a Bitcoin mine. Banks of computers, all they're doing, they're hammering away trying to solve algorithms. They're trying to solve puzzles. It's actually all they're doing. Once you solve the puzzle, you're rewarded with a Bitcoin. 1 Bitcoin. And you get 1 Bitcoin. Where's it gone? Right, miners rewards for successfully completing 1 block. They halve every 210,000 blocks on average of 4 years. So you've got, in the early days, 2009, when the puzzles were easy, you get 50 Bitcoins for solving a puzzle. 50, that's a lot of money. But it halves every 4 years and gets harder and harder and harder and harder. Today, this is actually 2020, you'll get 6 Bitcoins for solving the puzzle. And that's what these miners are doing. They're solving puzzles and generating Bitcoin. And Bitcoin will, given this halving effect, Bitcoin peaks out pretty much 2040, but in the end in 2140, so 120 years' time, at a maximum supply of 21 million Bitcoin. So that provides the scarcity, which is the investment story around Bitcoin, which is totally different to Ethereum. Ethereum's all about efficacy and blockchain. Bitcoin's about scarcity. There's only so much of it around, like gold. I'm going to hold it as a store of value. That's how the store of value is created. So if you believe in Bitcoin as a store of value, go buy some. I'm less convinced about Bitcoin than I am about Ethereum, because I can see how blockchain is going to roll out. Give you an idea, of the top 100 companies globally, 80 of them currently are rolling out blockchain-facilitated processes. Okay? So you're sitting there thinking, I've never seen a blockchain-facilitated process. What the heck is he talking about? 80% of the world is rolling them out right now. So again, it's happening. Logistics, settlement of trades, financial transactions, insurance. My God. Wouldn't we like to avoid all those forms when you take on a customer? You'll do a blockchain. Whatever, you know, it'll all just kind of happen in the way I've just described. You don't sign anything. That's how transformative it'll be. Okay. Main types. I mean, what's happening right now, so, of course, we got into a bit of a mania, another crypto mania, whatever it was, 3 years ago, I can't even remember. And Bitcoin went from 5,000 to 60,000, and now it's back at 30,000. And lots of coins got launched, because you can assign a coin to anything you like, actually. So all these coins got launched, and we suddenly had, I think it was 10,000 crypto coins. Craziness. What's happening now is that you're having the kind of the dot-com shakeout. So the vast majority of those coins are useless. They'll all just fall away, leaving the main ones, one of which will be Ethereum, I think, because it's got proper efficacy. So you remember the dot-com boom. It was like pets.com and van.com and all these kind of rubbish things. The hundreds of them floated, and then they all died. And he left with Amazon and Apple and Facebook and Microsoft and Tesla. Yeah, I couldn't do that one. The other thing about it's happening, I mean, institutional buyers are now investing in Bitcoin. Okay, so I should make this point. In terms of your clients, I'm sure they're asking you about crypto, probably more before this crash. They don't stop asking it when the price goes down, and that's natural human nature. We are not allowed to invest in Bitcoin as an asset manager. The regulator has to date banned it. We're not allowed to launch a crypto fund. And so for the time being, we just can't really do anything in this space. At some point, we will be allowed to do so. And I suspect the way we will do it as an asset manager will be to have some crypto as part of a balanced multi-asset portfolio. So we'll have 2% in Ethereum, whatever it is, along with the 98% in the equities and bonds and stuff. So we'll edge into it that way. We may launch a crypto fund when we're allowed, but I'm a little bit windy about that because there aren't going to be many left standing, in my view. So it's hard to have a balanced portfolio of cryptos larger than like 4, and that doesn't really make a portfolio. But people are buying it. Couple of things. I'm going to accelerate this, I think. Yeah. Yeah. So a lot of the world is unbanked. So you can't get a bank account if you're sitting in Bangalore and you're poor and you just can't get a bank account. You can not trade, but you can hold Bitcoin and use it to transact. But it's clunky. But if the evangelists of crypto will say, we're going to bank the world, because it's much easier. I'm not convinced about that. Also, mind your eye on the risks in terms of crypto hacks still happening. These will not be the latest ones. There have been ones since here. So there's still this fear that it is digital money, and you could get it hacked and taken away from you. That's a problem. That's going to linger around. By the way, your bank could get hacked and your money could get taken away from you. But you've got the regulator to stand behind it. So you've got insurance policies. You get the same in crypto. And then I think finally on the risks would be, yeah, I mean, this is an extraordinary chart. I mean, this is Bitcoin electricity consumption, 300 terawatt hours. It's the usual thing. Bitcoin electricity consumption, the mining bit, is the whole electricity consumption of Sweden or something. It's just craziness. So it's not very environmentally friendly. So that's not cool. So that'll come up now and again. Okay. Well, this is my last slide. We've got plenty of time for questions. That's cool. So, from an investment point of view, in terms of portfolios, what is Bitcoin worth? I've touched on this. This is in trillions, okay? Bitcoin is $1 trillion, half $1 trillion now, it's halved. Gold is $10 trillion. Okay. Global money supply is 100 trillion, which is about the same as global GDP, 90 trillion. Global debt, interestingly, is now 300 trillion, not 250. This is slightly out of date. And global savings, we've got, that's a quadrillion dollars of global savings, which is 1,000 trillion. That's the total global savings pool, which I found quite interesting. So in that sense, store of value, Bitcoin has some interest. And it has some interest as a store of value, but not as much as Ethereum. Okay. Let's take some questions. I'll just leave that up. Let's take some questions. So in summary, the thing which is going to change our lives is the metaverse, because we're going to live in it, partly live in it. Crypto will remain interesting as the backbone for blockchain. And the most interesting one is Ethereum. And NFTs, be they real estate or baseball caps, are here to stay. And they are, again, the building block for the metaverse, which we'll partly inhabit. I suspect we'll be around about, let me get this right, 8 hours sleep, 8 hours physical, 8 hours metaverse. That'll be our day. Think how much time you spend on the screen right now. It's more than 8 hours. Okay, I'm done. Thank you very much indeed. Questions?
Thank you. Any questions in the room? We've got a question over there.
Oh my
Let's
goodness,
just get a microphone there.
No, it's going to be a really hard question.
Metaverse, yes.
Not quite. Thanks for that. I just wanted to check on the buying metaverse land. Surely it's a first mover advantage there, because I just take a server and build another land. I'll copy Mars.
And I think I can't hear you properly. Could you just start again?
Can you hear it now? Sorry. Okay. The metaverse and you buying land. Surely it's a first mover advantage for companies out there, because you just create another server with another block of Mars land, yes. And then you pay some celebrity to buy a house next door, and then you push up property prices and you dump it.
Correct.
So where is the protection for the consumer at the end of the day here?
Yeah. So in any investment discussion, there's the good bit and the bad bit. So that's the bad bit. That's your risk function. So you've got Decentraland as a sandbox right now, plus this Mars thing, which is not going to go anywhere. And you're going to get a lot more metaverses. So why would I buy land in one of them, which is going to get swapped by everything else? So the flip side, your bet, is that the first mover metaverses will become the New York or the London of the broader metaverse. So you're betting that living close to Snoop Dogg and other celebrities or whatever the heck is there creates a hub, and Sotheby's have bought land, and there's an art gallery. You go to New York not because of the land it's on, it could be anywhere. It's because it's New York, because everything's there. That's your bet. Doesn't sound very convincing, does it? I didn't even convince myself.
No, I've got to be honest. And then I also noticed that something like Bored Ape, an NFT, which adds value, is only because you're part of the Bored Ape club, and then you can go to a club somewhere, which is physical to me. I don't want to spend 8 hours in a metaverse, but I'll buy an NFT so I can hang out with other rich people.
Yeah. And a lot of this is, the value is in the eye of the beholder. That's clear. And Bored Ape has really got on my nerves, because that's a total scam. But scarcity matters, and being in the right place or with the right thing matters. And it's the reason ladies buy a Gucci handbag as opposed to a Woolies handbag. It's just because it's a Gucci handbag. But you've got to want one.
Hi, Al. So, just firstly, are these your views or Mutual's views? So you don't have to answer that. And then, so limited understanding, but your opinion, I understand, is based on Meta with Ethereum, because that's, what happens if they one day decide to change that?
Try to change
their currency. Because obviously the way I understand it, in a very simple way, the only reason you have value is someone will pay more than you paid.
Oh, I think, okay. I think
so I'm just saying, at some point, how do they really monetize this? So let's say I go in and I put down a bit of money, and 3 years down the line, I'm worth $50 million, but now I want to bring that into the real world. How does that happen?
Got you. I think there's a couple of questions embedded there. These are my views, but I do stand here for Old Mutual. Okay. When the US came off the gold standard in the 1970s, 73 I think it was, they needed a commodity as a backing for the dollar. Okay? They didn't have a commodity big enough. The way they engineered that, it's a little bit conspiracy theory, but the way they engineered that was the oil price went from $10 to $80. So the value of that commodity was big enough to support the US dollar, i.e. petrodollars. So the way it'll probably happen with Ethereum, and by the way, there's no given in this game, and Ethereum is not a recommendation, I'm not allowed to give those, okay, just to be clear. But the play with Ethereum, how do I describe this? It's not a value play, it's a commodity play, okay? So, right, you need lithium, okay, in your battery. Okay? We're going to need a lot more lithium because we've got electric vehicles. Okay? You can't create much more lithium. So the way it happens is the value of lithium goes up. So that's what will happen with Ethereum. Ethereum is a commodity, not an asset class. So it's simply, as its use case increases, and if there's limited amount of it around, the value has to go up to compensate. It's that. It's not buying it because someone else will pay more. It's actually as simple as you have to believe its usage will increase. So if you believe that copper was going to be used hugely because we've got some new invention, you'd buy copper because we need more of it, and the value will go up. It's actually as simple as that. I'm sure that was really answered your question. And Ethereum could get superseded by something else, like Solana. That was a great white hope. Fallen away again. There is a first mover advantage in blockchain, because once everyone's using Ethereum, you're just going to use Ethereum because you've got to link in with them. So it's like Bitcoin. There's nothing special about Bitcoin. It's just the first. Ethereum is pretty good at what it does. It's not the best. But because 90% of the blockchain's on it, you're just going to go with Ethereum. Because at Old Mutual, what, you're going to go with Solana? When Stan Lam and Alan Gray, you're not going to do that. So it's the first mover advantage, which will keep Ethereum in place. And then as the usage goes up, the price will go up because it's a commodity. Was that? Didn't get that.
This is based on metal, which is someone God. Because you know, meta's a different universe, but it's not a real universe. Well, I suppose that's debatable. But the bottom line is it can be manipulated by people.
Oh, that's a whole different thing. Oh,
yeah.
Yes.
So what I'm saying is, and that's what those people do. So, I mean, what is your protection against?
Okay. So again, that's the risk factor around the bullish case. So number one, I definitely would say it's as real as your bank account. We just live in lines of code now, so let's get over that one, in my opinion. Is it at risk of being hacked and all those bad things and being controlled? Absolutely. And one of the concerns I have is that quantum computing will allow crypto immutability to be hacked because quantums are so much more powerful. And who owns all the quantum computing? China. We'll talk about that if you like. So they could hack into all this kind of stuff. So it is a riskier thing because it's more risky than sitting here with a jacket on. I'd agree with that. So this gentleman's hand up.
Sorry, I just wanted to, you almost mentioned
sorry, sir, let's just wait for the microphone so you can hear it on the...
Hi, George. Sorry, you answered some of it. But with computer powering increasing and getting better and better and better, you know, surely this blockchain is going to be taken away completely in the next 10 years by something else completely.
Could well be. Could well be. There's risk in everything. I agree with you. Could well be.
Hi, sorry, I just wanted to find out, there was on one of the slides it referred to the fact that blockchain, once the chain or the block has been created, that it can't be amended, or that it is then fixed and it continues on to the next particular block in the chain. So I think you sort of answered the one question in terms of quantum computing and that possibly causing someone out there from government or individual to possibly be able to essentially break the chain and go in and amend all of the details. Do you think there is a major chance of that happening sometime in the future?
Yeah, I think quantum computing could get there, is my view, actually. And as I just recognised, that's a risk factor. And if it does, that it's a question of what replaces it, I guess, and who does it, and if they've got something to replace it. And China could close us down right now in terms of our digital capability. They haven't chosen to yet, but they will. So it's a risk for everything.
It's always interesting because I always work on the assumption that there's always that one person out there, one group of individuals that want to watch the world burn. So they can then just cause a massive amount of financial damage that way, just for the fun of it.
Just for the fun of it, I agree. And you're absolutely correct. If one, this comes into risk management conversations. You're managing the tail end risk as an investor. So if you just believe that, you never invest in anything. So we're managing tail end risk.
So I can see the whole ecosystem that's been built with Ethereum, and I can see the value of the currency in terms of settlement in that ecosystem. The bit that gets me is the volatility of the currency. So Ethereum shooting up and dropping down, and surely that plays against the value, the sort of the commodity value of the currency.
Correct, and that's currently one of its bigger vices, is the volatility. So what tends to happen as any asset class gets bigger, the volatility tends to go down, because there's more of it to go around. So at the moment you've got quite a small trading pool, lots of participants, it's all over the place. You've got a very big trading pool, still lots of participants, the volatility will dampen down. It will dampen down. It may take some years.
Sorry, Hal. I think the elephant in the room has always been taxation of cryptocurrencies. Now, I know there's a debate between value versus commodity, but do you see the regulator ever, well, I guess not just regulating, but applying some form of tax? Because if it's a value investment, you could make the capital gains tax argument. If it's a commodity investment, then obviously there's different sides to that. But how long do you see the regulator kind of standing back?
I don't think the regulators really understand it to the extent they need to yet, which it sounds a little bit arrogant, but I really don't think, because it's really hard to understand. I don't understand all of it. It's really hard. I'm not a tax expert, and I've no desire to be a tax expert, so I'm not going to comment on the tax at all. Regulators will get there, and they will regulate the market. And I'm hoping that by then we'll have had the shakeout, have some sensible crypto, which have efficacy, and the regulator can stand behind what is a form of money in the way they stand behind other forms of money in terms of protecting consumers. I think that's what we'll get to.
Thanks. Do you have another question there?
Oh, God, it's Dieter. Oh, no.
Sorry, sit down, yeah,
We'll
please.
take 2 more.
Apparently, Germany is implying a capital gains tax calculation every year, by the way, starting last year. Well, that's what someone told me. Is there a reason why you couldn't have a dollar blockchain or a pound blockchain?
Quick question. I was expecting a longer one.
I was hoping you were going to leave.
Yes is the answer. And I mean, China's been very quick to come up with its digital currency. So we have central bank digital currencies, CBRDs, I think they're called. So China's pretty much got its one. The Fed is desperately trying to get its one out. I know the UK is working on it. So yes is the answer. So again, this is another risk factor too. I'm holding Bitcoin and Ethereum. They're going to just take it all over. That could definitely happen. They could definitely swamp the market. And I think they will try to. And so your bet is that there will be a mix of public and private money as part of the bet. Yeah, I'm just exhibiting how many risks there are in this market. It's not for the faint-hearted.
Okay, one more question over there. Then we need to start wrapping up. Go ahead, Stephen.
So having a conversation earlier on, or a presentation by Anne on ESG, my question goes about the carbon footprint of mining Bitcoin and what it's doing to our Earth. What are your opinions on that?
Another Achilles heel, no question. Ethereum is just switching from a proof of work to a proof of stake, which will take out, I think, 95% of mining. So Ethereum is making that switch in July, so that'll be a really good thing. So you've got to prove you've got it as opposed to prove you made it, something like that. But it'll take the mining thing out of the equation. Bitcoin will keep on mining. But if you saw that chart, we're at the point where the returns are diminishing on mining Bitcoin. We're almost at the maximum. We're at 19.5 million right now. So that should tail off, I think. And you could see a world where the government could say, well, you've got to stop this stuff. This is ridiculous. That could easily happen. That's another risk. Because I'm not a fan of what they're doing.
I mean, can you share any sort of estimations of the power that the globe uses to run blockchain and not just mine, but to run it and keep it alive?
It used to be in my head at the last talk. It's something like the entirety of Sweden or one of the Nordic countries, is their electricity consumption is the same as what it costs to create Bitcoin every year. Pick a Nordic country, it'll be right.
Okay, we need to wrap up. Maybe one last question. When do you think will the asset management industry be able to include cryptos in funds?
Well, that's a question for the regulator. I mean, our regulators tend to follow offshore regulators, not in everything, but tend to. The US really wants to regulate it now because people are losing a ton of money right now. So we're going to see a little bit of a thing post the Terra thing where people lost like $40 billion straight off the bat in like 2 days. So that's consumers wearing that. So the US is concerned about consumers, and so they're going to get to regulate it fairly quickly. I don't know, if I was a betting man, kind of 3 years' time, I would think SA will get there, I think.
Okay. Great. Well, thank you very much. I'm sure we would have many more questions, but we have to wrap it up there, so I really appreciate it. Thanks for joining us. It's always a pleasure listening to you and you sharing your insights and your ability to make a very complicated subject just sound a little bit easier. So thank you very much for that.
Thanks a lot.
Right. With the amount of money that is pouring into this digital world, it's really not something that we can ignore anymore or say it's only going to happen sometime in the future.
Up next, we're discussing your business and how to manage threats, like avatars who work harder than you, and creating a resilient practice.
Supposed to do a slow, dramatic walk. Thank you very much. So on stage, I would like to welcome Joy Truter, Bash Naidu, and Shannon Lewitz, Old Mutual Wealth business coaches. And ladies, we also don't have avatars for you today because we were just not able to capture your beauty in an avatar.
Thank you, Stefan. The disruption of the last few years has not only changed how we create value, but it's also changed what we value. Excuse me. So as Stefan mentioned, my name is Joy Truter. I'd like to welcome you guys here and those connected to us. So today, we'll be talking about these trends. And for the last two, thanks in part for the last 2 very disruptive years, our clients or our consumers and your clients are more connected than ever before. And this largely due to the sudden impact of into the digital world. And it's not only changed how we create value, but also what your clients value. So on my panel today, I've got Shannon and Bosch, as Stefan mentioned. And I'll be asking them some important questions regarding these trends that we as coaches have been watching and that we believe has already made an impact or shifted or reshaped the business environment. And it's also changed how your clients engage with product and service providers. So what is the solution? We have 5 key trends that, as I mentioned, that we've been watching, and that we believe this must happen in order to anticipate the changes, in order to design and implement relevant and meaningful change. So let's take a look at trend number 1. So we believe this trend is the ticket to the game for survival in the future, and that is hyper-personalization. Now, as many, you all know that differentiation has been a key business strategy in the business world, right? So if you can't set yourself apart in your market, because it doesn't matter which industry you're in, if you cannot set yourself apart in the market, then you will become stagnant and eventually you will be in trouble. So let's start with the first question. Shannon, can you talk us through the difference between differentiation and hyper-personalization and how that might play out in the emerging world of financial planning?
Sure, thank you, Joy. So hyper-personalization is in essence differentiation on steroids. And we all know that differentiation has allowed advisors to basically have a set service of menus that they deliver to 2 or 3 groups of clients based on their value to your practice. And that's just been the way that it's been done in the past. With hyper-personalization, what's really great is it takes differentiation to the next layer. It's saying we recognize that you will always have 2 groups of clients, definitely, because they are worth a certain amount of money in your business. But you have to understand that those clients are wanting to be seen as individuals, and they are demanding a very unique experience. And I think just they want to be seen, they want to be heard, and they want to be understood and loved. So that's, in a nutshell, hyper-personalization. And I can imagine most of you are thinking, sure, now you're saying I've got to increase my face time with my clients. I'm already battling to finish all my client review meetings. I'm already strained from a capacity point of view. I don't have enough time. And you're telling me, Shannon, I might need to reduce my number of clients to an unsustainable number, which will make me unprofitable, and I just want to give up. So everybody take a deep breath and just relax, because that's actually not the case. I won't ask people to put their hands up, but if you're wearing a smart device on your arm at the moment, on your wrist, or perhaps you do online shopping with Woolies or with Pick n Pay, with Take-A-Lot and Amazon, or you're a loyalty card member with Woolies and Pick n Pay, you have already been exposed to some level of hyper-personalization. And as you know, when those apps are communicating with us all, it's not a person. It's actually an algorithm that's busy prompting and sending you messages, keeping you updated on your preferences, where your order perhaps is, calling you by your name. They're saying, hi, Shannon, your order will be delivered at 3 o'clock on Sunday morning. So if we know that that is the world, and we're already exposed to that level of hyper-personalization, how do we take that and bring it into your businesses as business owners? And there are 2 things that you need to do. The first one really is you've got to have really good insights into your clients. And a lot of you, if I look around the room, I know you run good practices. I know you're capturing good amounts of data on your clients. But now we want you to shake things up a little bit and start capturing real-time behavioral data. So that's not just, do my clients like whiskey or wine? Do they like to be emailed or WhatsApped? It's really looking at the deeper level. What are their beliefs? What are their values? Who are their front row people in their families? What do they hold close and dear to their hearts? And the thing is, I also know from a lot of people in this room, we've got that level of information, but it's in our heads. So we've got to really start capturing that information into your CRM system. So that's the first thing that you want to be doing. So you want to check in on your clients. Then you want to come back home, as I say, and you want to check your product offering. And you want to make sure that whatever you are offering your clients as a service, that is what your clients are wanting, because now you've got this additional insights on them. And then you might need to make some tweaks, and then you want to add a flavor of Obviously, the human capital side, the people, and then your technology and capabilities. And you want to make sure that you're leveraging that. So often people go, so Shannon, are you saying that I must not automate and I mustn't have standardized processes? And we're not saying that. We're saying just be smart. When you use technology, make sure that when you pull the trigger, when your clients receive any kind of automation from your business, it still feels personal. So I've said a lot, Joy, but that's very high level what is hyper-personalization.
Okay, so now you've mentioned client experience and how clients perceive the relationship that they have with their planners. Now, in the businesses that we work with, we've seen a lot of them incorporating impactful client initiatives. Now, can you talk us a little bit about that in terms of the specific key value add?
Sure. So I want to say pre-hyper-personalization, because we're so used to hearing pre-COVID, but pre-hyper-personalization, our planners have delivered or initiated maybe 1 or 2, maybe 3 generic flavored client initiatives. And it's usually been a golf day, it might have been a super stunning high tea for Women's Month. But with the trend of hyper-personalization, it's actually forcing planners to think out their box and to actually start basing any kind of new thing that you want to bring in, whether it's a new comm strategy around social media, if it's a new gifting idea, if it's anything, you want to base your thinking and your employment of new technology and ideas on your clients' behavioral data. So that's one of the first things, Joy.
Okay.
And then I just want to add, I mean, I think you asked me if there's any kind of trends coming up with what kind of behaviors, I mean, what kind of events the clients are having.
Yeah.
So, I mean, in the practices that we deal with, what's top of mind for a lot of advisors or for their clients is mental well-being. It's definitely ESG as well as social responsibility. And that's the theme that we're picking up, which most clients are quite, find quite important, and that's been quite a theme throughout the event this morning and today. So if you're looking at supporting those initiatives, if you look at social responsibility, there's a big trend, and maybe it's just in Cape Town and the coastal areas, but practices are getting involved in beach cleanups. So they're partnering with schools to maybe join some social committee. They're definitely taking a hard view on doing proper recycling in their office. How do we use our equipment better? If we buy new or purchasing new tools, is it environmental friendly, and just that lens? They're also donating to charities that are very dear to their clients' hearts. So they're showing up on those platforms. And what they're also wanting to do is create some kind of well-being programs for their teams. They're focusing a lot on that, and then obviously that will spill over into their client arena.
Okay, so what I'm hearing from you is that hyper-personalization is basically differentiation on steroids. And a great way to deepen your connection with your clients beyond financial planning is to incorporate those meaningful client initiatives. So let's take a look at our second trend, employee well-being. So the ultimate outcome of this work is not only happy and healthy people, although that's clearly a very important byproduct, but also it's enhanced performance, business performance, as well as from a productivity perspective. So Shannon has mentioned hyper-personalization now, and we want to hyper-personalize the experience for clients. But if your people aren't fulfilled and on board, you're going to have a very difficult time delivering that service or that experience that you've envisioned for your clients. So with that in mind, I'll ask Bosch, what are the key fundamentals that need to be put in place to address the hygiene factors, like your basic needs, your requirements for the employer-employee relationship, and that will enable the employee to fulfill or to deliver on the vision and mission of that business?
Okay, so one of the essential assets in any business is its employees, and the roles and one of the essential assets in any business is its employees and the various skills they actually bring to these roles. So as businesses evolve, so too does the landscape, And now the roles, responsibilities, and relationships have now shifted or have become blurred. And we've seen this recently with the business disruptions. And so, yeah, that's the important thing. So employers need to ensure that their employees have what it takes to support the upcoming trends. And one of this is hyper-personalization. And this plays an important role in executing and creating a client experience. So business owners need to provide a clear direction and a clear vision for their employees to actually buy into the overall growth strategy of the business. And there's two ways of doing this to help you in your business. And is one, when you are recruiting new employees, try to be creative in the roles, because remember, they're going to bring value into your business. And the second is, when you're reviewing your existing employees, make sure they understand the vision of your business, and yeah, to help you grow your business and also contribute towards the overall strategy.
Okay, then tell us a little bit more about the motivation factors, like the culture, and how that influences performance and well-being overall.
Okay, so Hertzberg two-factor theory, you probably heard about it. Hertzberg two-factor theory points out that money is not a motivator. However, the absence of money can be a demotivator. So since money, according to this theory, is a hygiene factor, then it stands to reason that rewards and motivational factors is not about the money. It's about the well-being of the employees and also lifestyle. And I think lifestyle is very important, and the pandemic has taught us this. So moving on to, rewards also reinforces certain behaviors, but it also highlights businesses' values. So when incentivizing employees, rewards that are outside of the salaries, ensure that this is stipulated in the employee agreement and make sure you honor it. Because motivation drives productivity, and it's an impetus for employees to work harder to deliver on the overall strategy. So, Joy, there's two things that we have to look at, and I think they're value drivers, and I call them value drivers or true reward drivers. One could be intrinsic, and intrinsic meaning self-worth. And what are employees looking at? They're looking at probably upskilling, training, development, or it could be a promotion. The second is extrinsic, the extrinsic value driver, and that speaks to something that's tangible. So it could be employee benefits, it could be contributions, but for me what stands out is flexible working hours. And if you look at Amazon, for example, they have implemented a 4-day week policy on conditions employees delivers on the desired outcomes. Very important. So the next thing is, George, your point on company culture. I think culture plays an important role, or has different facets in the business, brings different facets into the business. And it's also important for growth, productivity, it increases productivity. There's one particular thing that speaks out to me is rewards. And yeah, if you look at Microsoft recently, if you look at their new policy around salaries, they're trying to increase employee salaries for retention, and culture speaks to not only productivity, but also speaks to retention of your employees.
You know what I found quite interesting in what you said earlier that really stood out for me was money is not a motivator. But yeah, the absence of money is
demotivator.
Yeah, that was quite interesting. So, based on what Bosch has said, the running of any business depends on everyone knowing your vision and mission of the business, their roles and responsibilities that are aligned to this, and what skill set, tool set, and mindset is required in order to set your people and your business up for success. And in turn, what will happen is you will start fostering this culture of growth, and that's both personally and professionally. So moving on to our third trend, replatforming. Now, business and IT operations are becoming increasingly automated. So if you are not modernizing your applications, and this is a vital part in order to advance your business. Now, Shannon has spoken about hyper-personalization and how we engage with clients. Bosch has spoken about employee well-being and how you engage with your employees. But you spend so much money on technology, right? And upskilling your staff. But if your systems are not talking to each other, then it doesn't really matter whether you have this high-performing team. So with that in mind, Bosch, I'll ask you again. Let's start simple. What is replatforming? And how does that translate in business? What is it that the audience needs to know?
Thanks, Joe. I think that's an important trend you've raised. And online technology is moving at a frightening pace. And if your businesses are not operating in this fast-paced environment, the threat is business irrelevance. So replatforming is not the latest buzzword. It's basically viewing your business with a new lens for efficiencies, for operations and processes, and how all of this comes together in your business. It's just, yeah, so the question to ask yourself as a business owner is, where do you want to take your business with new technology? And remember, there are multiple systems out there. And you may want to consider the following before committing to a system. One is identify what your ideal client experience looks like and how will technology support this. And the next is to look at how can you create a bespoke process that also speaks to technology, but also aligns your existing technology with new technology.
Okay, then what's the relationship between replatforming and people?
So, Joy, it's what we need to consider is when automating is about your users and your clients. And the trick here is to work smarter, but not harder. And if your business is not delivering on this, because remember, systems were actually built to help ease the ease of business. And if it's not doing that, then either your systems are not working, or doesn't speak to each other, or it's just the wrong system for your business. So yeah, so when investing in new technology, I think it's important that your service providers help you upskill and train your employees. And this also speaks, and also remember, they need to provide ongoing service and user support, which is very important, besides upskilling. And this speaks to the employee value proposition of upskilling. And I think you would actually notice a trend coming through here about hyper-personalization, which is quite important, and Shannon speaks to about. So the more automated your systems, the less manual intervention, the less effort from employees, and the lower the cost. So now employees can spend more time upskilling, learning, and developing, and enjoy the well-being benefits of taking time off.
Okay. You've mentioned something about multiple systems, and you know, there's shiny new toys out there. So what have you noticed in the practices that we work with around this and in our various networks?
So Joy, you're aware, as business coaches, we do a lot of trend watching and research. And what we found is that what we've noticed in the industry and in our practices is that planners are embracing, I could say, popular systems, are chasing the new and shiny. And what they have, rather than actually enabling the client experience and the business's overall strategy. So that's very important. So planners need to be aware of what's out there and understand how these systems align to the new and existing, and more importantly, how it delivers on the client experience. So another factor to consider is the cost versus benefit. So a phased approach over an affordability cycle, and also upgrade as your business grows instead of buying a whole lot of technology and it's not working for you. So rather consider adding as your business, as in your different growth strategies, and having scalability without losing the quality of your business. So once again, it's pointless having technologies that don't speak to each other. Think about your client experience that's most important and how this technology is going to enable you to deliver on your client experience. And we all know that the best technology is useless if it's not used optimally.
Yeah. So clearly it sounds like technology is a ticket to the game. And Bosch, you also mentioned something about strategy, and that actually reminded me of something. A lot of people think that strategy and digital strategy are two separate things, when in actual fact, strategy happens in a digital environment. And that is why digital strategy can't be standalone. Okay, so we're going to move on to our last two trends, which is intergenerational wealth planning, legacy, and longevity. Did you know that in the next 20 years, 30 trillion will transfer to heirs and beneficiaries? In the second generation, 65% of this wealth will be lost. And in the third generation, 90% of this wealth will be lost. So what are we as consumers, the industry, what are we doing about this? So let's start simple. Shan, are these three things the same or are they different?
So Joy, good question, because I think there is a lot of confusion sometimes in the industry around those three elements. And the key thing is it's not the same. And the difference really is intergenerational planning, in our opinion, prepares the money for the family. Longevity prepares, so let's start from the beginning. Intergenerational planning prepares the money for the family. Wealth planning, in our opinion, prepares the family for the gift of the money. And longevity, it's really about your plan. So as financial planners, you all chat to clients, have a financial plan, and you need to make sure that the plan that you put in place is going to safeguard your clients in two scenarios. Obviously, the first scenario could be that your clients become quite ill, and they now need to perhaps have additional medical care, they might need to downscale their homes, and they need to have sufficient funds that they can now maintain and support the lifestyle that they've become accustomed to. The second scenario, and it's normally a fear that a lot of your clients have, is that your clients start to outlive their plan. We all, as lifestyle financial planners, plan for 100 with our clients. So we need to make sure that if clients do hit that number, that there's sufficient funds to continue living their life. So that's obviously super important. And I think we appreciate the role that all of our financial advisors play, as does the industry, but we really feel there's an added responsibility that our planners should be focusing on. And that's really creating a safe space for conversation, proper conversation, not that you're not having proper conversation, but just a safe place to have conversation with the family. And our planners also normally do joint planning, so it would be with the client, the spouse, and then the extended heirs and beneficiaries. And I don't know if you guys have heard, but there's a word being thrown around called the family charter. And basically, when you're having a chat with the heirs and beneficiaries and family, that is the output document. So that's the key difference.
Okay, now everybody's talking about this, right? And everybody understands it, and everybody's ready and keen to go, and our planners are saying, let's do this. But nobody is actually telling them where to start. And because of that, no action is being taken. So can you tell us, where do our planners actually start?
Sure. So I'm going to maybe just look at three different levels in a business. The first one would be at a business level. So we've got to quantify the level of risk that you have today in your business. And the easiest way to start is if you think of the investable assets and the amounts of income or fees that you earn from clients who are perhaps over the age of 75. Then I want you, touch wood, Bosch, to pretend that of those clients over the age of 75, they pass away. Half of them pass away tomorrow. How much of those investable assets will stick in your practice, and what impact would that have on your income? And can you afford to take that level of risk? So that's at level 1, business. The second level really looks from a client's perspective. So now that you've identified your high-risk clients, we're saying, if you look at them, where do you perhaps need to go and have a conversation with the heirs and beneficiaries? And I think 2 things you want to make sure when you have this conversation is how well do those heirs and beneficiaries understand the sacrifice and the discipline that the grandfather, the mom, the dad took to build up this, or accumulate this pot of wealth. And then the second thing you want to check in on is, while the client's alive, is do they also understand the purpose of the money that they're going to inherit? And do they understand why it's so important that their grandfather or their father or their mother wanted to leave this legacy?
Yeah, so what I've took out from what Shannon said now, like it really stood out for me, is that as planners, you play a critical role in all 3 aspects of this business, of this aspects. And she's mentioned that we have a designed framework in place where we as coaches are able to help you implement that in your business. There is a very distinct process that businesses generally go through during change management, and that is anticipate, design, and implement. Now, it's not just about anticipating the trends. It's about anticipating the change that comes with those trends, and then designing a service or a new value because of that change, and then being very deliberate in how you take that new value out. However, we do caution you that you have to spend an equal amount of time in all 3 of these steps, because some, we find, spends more time in one area than the others, and what happens is, because that's where their strength lies, but what happens is this actually translates into a very bad client experience. So we do caution you that when you go through this process, that you spend equal amounts of time in each step. And then, so what am I saying? So design is what we value, what value you are creating, and then implement is the how that value translates in the lives of your clients. Because remember the statement I made at the beginning of this presentation. It's not how we create value, but it's what we value now. So you're probably wondering what the next steps are. So we will be sharing a booklet and a one-page document with 2 or 3 things that you can get you started, that with practical items that you can implement in your business. Then at your next action, give us a call and get your business coach involved. If you don't have a business coach, give us a call. The details will be on the one-pager, and then we'll assign a business coach to you. Thank you very much for your time, and thank you for allowing us to share these important trends with you.
Thank you very much, ladies. Do we have any questions for the ladies from the room? I don't think we've got anything else online here. No, well, we need to move on to the next session, so thank you very much. Thanks for sharing your research with us. Wait, we've got, okay, let's just take one question. Sorry, you have to sit down a bit. We're just going to wait for the microphone there. Just there we go.
Okay, so thanks. There was just a comment about that everything needs to be written into the
Family charter.
No, when you do an employee contract, that all the rewards need to be placed there. Is there any specific reason? I prefer to do kind of ad hoc stuff for my poor staff. They'd have to try and deal with me.
Thank you, Ken. So I think that's a great question. So generally, any kind of rewards or incentives, we prefer that you put into your performance contract. Yeah. And you keep the legalities in your employment contract. And your view of doing that ad hoc as they come up is absolutely fine, as long as you are transparent and you contract for at least a minimum of 12 months, so that there's no surprises.
So
for your staff.
Yeah. So sorry, it's not contract, it's an agreement, basically agreements.
Does that answer your question?
Okay.
No other questions? All right, okay.
Thank you very much.
Now I think you can go. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for sharing your research with us on how to identify threats, and then also how we can stay ahead of the curve by adopting new applications into our financial planning practices.
During the break, I'm sure I overheard some humans talking about cancelling avatars, which is why I will be listening very carefully to our next speaker, Graham Codrington, and his advice on avoiding cancel culture.
You weren't joking about a slow walk up here. I think we've all got that wrong as we come up. I don't know if Donnie's left the best till last, but it is the scariest till last. This concept of being cancelled and finding yourself in a situation where you thought you were making a joke or you thought you were just saying something innocent, and it explodes and could impact not just your afternoon and your evening, but your career and your life. When we talk about cancel culture, there's a fascinating South African-linked story. This woman tends to be put up as the first example of this cancelling happening. I don't know if you know her story. Her name is Justine Sacco. And on the 20th of December 2013, she was on her way home from the United States to South Africa. Well, not home. She lived in the United States, and she was coming back for Christmas to visit her family. Hadn't been back to Cape Town for many, many years. And as she boarded the plane in the United States, routing via Heathrow, she was tweeting a few chirpy comments about some of her fellow passengers, commenting on a German person being typically German and a French person being typically French. And then she hopped on the plane, and she flew across to Heathrow, and while she was in transit, she carried on some of those chirps. She only had 174 followers on Twitter, and nobody thought that anything would come of it, except this was the tweet that she tweeted before boarding to Cape Town. Okay. An attempt at humor, right? Going to Africa, hope I don't get AIDS, just kidding, I'm white. And she switched her phone off and boarded her 12-hour flight to Cape Town. All hell broke loose. While she was in the air, she became the #1 trending Twitter feed in the world. Millions of people saw her tweet, and she was just sleeping in business class. She didn't log in. It was 2013, didn't have access to the internet on the plane. People began to call for her head. People contacted her employer and asked what they were going to do about it. And then another Twitter handle began to emerge. Has Justine landed yet? Hashtag. And people were desperately, this became like a global phenomenon of people saying, I cannot wait to see Justine's face when she lands in Cape Town. And realized she's gone from 174 Twitter followers to being a world celebrity in the Twitter sphere. In fact, somebody actually went to the airport to wait for her plane to arrive and took the photograph of her as she switched her phone on. And the first message, as she's told the story later, that came in was from her best friend saying, I'm terribly sorry, please phone me. And then 1,000 other messages coming in. She was fired, not quite immediately, but within the next few hours. She's fine. It was just Twitter. She got another job and life moved on. But that's what cancelling is. Okay? So it's when you do something. Now, we all look at her tweet now and we think, silly, stupid, bad. Shouldn't have done that. Is it enough to lose your job, your livelihood, to become a worldwide phenomenon overnight? Well, I don't know. You decide or not, but that's what cancelling is. And there are a lot of people very nervous of it, and it's happening. Well, it's not quite happening all the time. You probably don't even know anybody personally who's been cancelled. So this is not something that's an immediate, urgent danger and that in this room 10% of us are going to be hit by it. But it is a possibility that this could happen. And it is a possibility that something that you do unintentionally could turn out to be something quite dramatic for your career. So, how do we deal with it? Well, first of all, let me just try and explain what's going on. Why is this happening? And it's called culture wars, if you're looking for another label. On the left-hand side, and by left I'm meaning politically and socially, so this is liberals and progressives. On the left-hand side of our world at the moment are people who are focused on inclusion, if I can give it its simplest summary word. So, for example, just last week, I was looking for the most recent example I could find of this inclusion culture. And Barbie has announced that Barbie is now releasing 2 new Barbie dolls in the range. The one is a hard of hearing Barbie who's got a hearing aid. And the other, I think it's vitiligo, I think is the way you pronounce it, the skin condition. And this is now part of just the long Barbie range of Barbies with disabilities and all sorts of inclusion. You can go further to look for examples. I think one of my favorite examples is of when I say to you, get me a skin-colored plaster. Until a few years ago, the only color skin you could get was, I don't know who had the skin of the plaster color that I used to use, but it wasn't the color brown. It wasn't my color skin either, but still, it wasn't brown. And now suddenly we've got brown-colored plasters. And if you look this up, you can see what I am, right? A middle-class, middle-aged white guy. I don't feel the emotion that a black person feels when they put a plaster on their finger and it matches the skin color. You may have no idea how emotional that is. I ask you to look it up. Look up the YouTube videos of grown people crying because they are now represented. That's what the left-hand side of the equation is trying to look at. Inclusion, representation, looking after minorities and oppressed people. But here's the problem with this side, is if you go a little bit further left, you then reach a position where people on this side say, unless you are actively involved in including people, you can't just do it passively. You can't just be not racist. You have to be anti-racist. You have to declare and shout and protest. If you're not part of protests for inclusion, you're not doing enough. And there are books and all sorts of people out talking about this. And on this side, on this left-hand side, the danger, if you go too far left, is that you get to thought police. You get to people telling you that nothing you say is right, and everything you say should be suspicious, especially if you're a middle-class, middle-aged white man. And there are a few of us in the room. So what's going on the other side? So over here, right, politically, culturally, socially, by right we don't mean correct, we just mean on the right-hand side. And these are the conservatives. And from an economic position would also be libertarians and neoliberals. We'll talk about those a little bit later. And on this side, people are saying, but do you guys just accept anything that happens? So if a young black person steals something, the guy on this side over here is going to say, yeah, but he didn't really steal, right? I mean, he's hungry. He comes from an oppressed background, and we've got to understand all of his culture and background to understand. And the guy on this side says, oh, so now anything goes, right? We can just let anything happen. And then they look at things going on in culture and society. And so they then see a cartoon where two boys kiss. It was literally that frame, where there's this little kissing moment in the gym, and two boys kiss in a Disney cartoon that happened last year. And this side says, yeah, I don't want my children watching that. I don't want my children being mind controlled by those, people over there who are mind controlling them. And then it doesn't only have to get into very, very controversial spaces. It can also just be innocent. So this is Pixar's latest, also from Disney, Pixar's latest movie. And it's essentially about girls getting their periods. That's what Turning Red is. Okay, so it's at age 11, 12, 13. This little girl starts getting her period, and every time she does, she turns into a red monster. Some of you ladies know. I have a wife and 3 daughters. I know. It does happen. And so it's very cool. I think it's one of Pixar's best movies ever, by the way, especially as a dad of 3 daughters. But, the people on this side are saying, where's the innocence? Can we not just leave some things for home? Disney shouldn't be helping my daughters understand their menstrual cycles. I think that's for me to do as a parent. And so, we all cancel each other. And the right and the left are equally good at cancelling. People on this side also say, and I'm specifically now thinking of middle-class, middle-aged white men, say, yeah, a few years ago I can understand that you would have seen me as the oppressor and that I was, the guy with the power. But look at me now. I mean, aren't I the oppressed guy? What about reverse racism? And then, in case you want to know the group of people who stand on this side, they've been given a label, the intellectual dark web. You've got a whole lot of them across the top there, the Tucker Carlsons, Alex Jones, Jordan Petersons, who, with lots and lots of money and lots of airtime, complain about being silenced and complain about not being heard and cancelled. And you can listen to them every single day telling you how much they are cancelled. Anyway, don't have to go overseas to do this. There are some South Africans who are doing this. So a guy here down in Cape Town who's picked up the school capture hashtag and is now complaining that schools are being captured by the diversity consultants who want to make problems that don't exist so that they can charge money to the schools to fix them. Got a author like Douglas Kruger, who talks about political correctness gone mad and how that's a huge problem. Now, you can probably sense from my tone, and some of you who checked my CV, that you'll know I'm from this side of the stage, personally. I'm trying to present, I'm desperately trying, I'm not succeeding because my tone here hasn't helped, but I'm trying to show you where the problem is and how each of the sides see each other. If we go too far on this side, of course, the danger here is racism and misogyny and oppression, which is exactly what that side accuses them of. But of course, this side has got a reasonable accusation of the other side as well, of thought police and political correctness gone mad. Now, this isn't a new problem. And in fact, if I can frame it slightly differently, I'd like to suggest that this is an age-old problem, that in fact is what we are supposed to have as society, this left and right arguing with each other. Because you see, on the right-hand side, the main principle is freedom, especially freedom of speech. We should have the freedom to say what we like, live by the consequences of what we say, but we should not be shut down. We should be allowed to say what we want to say. And that's a very, very, very strong and powerful principle in society. On the other side, of course, you've got the people who say, yeah, but what if the things you say hurt other people? And what if we damage other people? Now, we saw this play out during COVID, because this side would say, I need to have the freedom to live my life. If I don't want to take the vaccine, surely that's my choice. If I don't want to wear a mask, that's my choice. And then the other side, of course, will say, yeah, but you've got to balance these two things out. as one of the founding fathers in America said, when this debate was going on while they were writing the American Constitution in the 1700s, Quincy Adams said, "Your right to swing your fist stops at the end of my nose." So yeah, swing your fist. Just don't hit my nose. And that's the debate we've got to have. Should government be allowed to tell us what to do? Never. Should everybody just be allowed to do anything they like, no matter the consequences for other people? Never. And I don't think we should ever find exactly the answer to that. I think history shows us we always have that fight. Sometimes we're heading in this direction, and then we realize we've gone too far with letting everybody just do their own thing, and we course correct. And then we bring in a few regulations and we pull things out. This is exactly what George was talking about earlier with Bitcoin, right? Bitcoin's in the Wild West at the moment. It's a libertarian, fantastic thing, but then if it collapses, like Dogecoin did last week, there are no regulations. When you say regulations, you're suddenly over this side. You're saying we need to rein it in. We need to have some boundaries. We need to have some societal mixes. And I think this balancing act is what human history is about. So we're just part of a long tradition that goes all the way back to the Egyptians and the Greeks and the Romans and everywhere in between. This is the discussion. We should be having this debate, and wherever you stand, shout loudly. We need all the voices. Of course, that's part of the problem. We now know how to shout very loudly, and we've got lots of voices. And this is the first time in history we're doing this where everybody can get involved. And when I say everybody, ask Justine Sacco what everybody means. You thought you only had 174 friends. How the hell did 1 million people get to comment on whether you should be fired or not? So some of you might be thinking, hey, isn't there an easy solution here, right? Why don't we all just come to the middle? There's the middle line there, Graham. Why don't you just stand there? It's not that easy, though. Because where is the middle? So let's take a historical example that hopefully is not controversial in this room. Where is the middle ground on slavery? Let's say, and I'm not going to point left or right, let's say we've got one person on this side who says, I like my slaves. I can't harvest my wine farm without the slaves. And then on the other side, you've got a person who says, look, slavery, just give me a definition. You own other human beings. Where's the middle ground? Explain to me how those two people find a halfway point between slavery and not slavery. You kind of got to make a choice. And your choice puts you in a camp. So it's not that easy. You want a slightly more controversial example? Abortion. Currently raging in the United States. Now we can use the sides, with the right-hand side saying, no, abortion is murder. That's a child inside there. And the person on this side saying, well, it's not a child until it's not in there. And so it's not murder, it's just healthcare. Now, where's your compromise, right? Some of you are very uncomfortable because you've got a position. But there's no middle, right? So it's not just a case of we all sit down around the table and we have a beer or two and then we come up with that middle. You've got to choose. And this is why cancellation happens. Because if you're on this side and there's some woke moron on that side, you're not trying to compromise. You're not trying to look for the halfway point. You know what you believe and you stand by it. And you'll want to cancel them and not be involved. But then the same on this side. If they look across and they say, look at that racist, misogynist, Bronze Age Neanderthal over that side, they're not interested in any kind of, let's find a halfway point here. Right, you got the problem. It isn't a case of finding a compromise. It's a case of making sure that what you believe you are able to present in a way that doesn't cause somebody else to say, I'm coming for you. You want to be able to say, this is what I believe, this is why I believe it, this is why I think it will make a better world. If there is a place for us to find ourselves, it's that I believe most people on both sides really believe that their version of the world is the version that will make a better world. That's the bit we want to try and connect on. But what I've been asked to do is to make sure that you understand as financial advisors how you and your teams can ensure that you don't fall into any of these traps, that you don't say something or do something or post something that would cause a significant section of your client base or your potential client base to say, I cannot work with you. I think it could happen. I don't think it's going to be something that happens regularly to the average person, but it could happen. So what do you do? Just so that you know, I've got skin in this game, and I think this is possibly why Donnie invited me. I kind of try and get cancelled quite regularly. I don't mean that flippantly. I'm an activist. It's a decision I've made with my life. It's what I want to do. And so I throw stuff out there all the time. Right now, if you follow my Facebook feed this morning, it's a little bit fun on my Facebook feed at the moment, talking about the Stellenbosch urination thing going on there. I'm not scared to put my views out, and I've probably been cancelled. I know there's a whole lot of companies who won't work with me because of my views on various parts of geopolitics and so on. You're not making that decision, I'm sure. But I had a personal experience 2 years ago with Diwali. I just bought a new puppy during lockdown, as most of you did. You got new pets. If you come and visit me, this puppy has no idea what it's like to live without human beings, thinks that you are visiting her alone. Total princess. In fact, her name is Princess General Leia Organa. Emphasis on the princess. I probably should have a photograph of her in this presentation, but anyway, it was her first Diwali. She was about 6 months old at the time, and the fireworks were going bananas as they do, and she was terrified. And so I just commented, geez, I wonder when these fireworks will be over. My dog, my puppy is terrified. What I didn't know, and as a 50-year-old white man, I probably should have known, but I didn't, is that Diwali for Hindus is a nightmare. It's their festival, the Festival of Lights. It's fireworks and lights. And every single year, racists in every Hindu neighborhood use the excuse of fireworks going off to just attack the Hindus. So Hindus know what they're doing. They scroll back through your feed if you comment on Diwali, and they check what you did on New Year's. And they check what you did on Guy Fawkes. And sadly for me, I had commented on the 5 years earlier when I lived in London. And we had chosen as a family to go out to a Guy Fawkes event in Hyde Park. And I had commented on how amazing it was. And they put these two screenshots together. You racist! It happens. It happens. And so what should you do when the mob comes for you? Just so that you know, this is a picture of a witch hunt. And people use the label witch hunt incorrectly. Remember, when they were hunting witches, they were hunting for the bad people. And so if you are not a bad person, you are not a witch, then it's not a witch hunt. If you think it is a witch hunt, it's probably because you are a witch. But anyway, we'll leave that for another day. The first thing you want to do is to make sure it doesn't start. Okay, so if possible, don't start. There are 4 things to do to make sure it doesn't even start. The first is work out what gets you angry. Some of you sitting here, some of you watching online might already be angry with the last 20 minutes of my presentation. Work out why. You shouldn't get angry. I know my tone's been a little bit chirpy on this side of the stage, but that shouldn't be enough to make you angry. Never, ever post or comment when you are angry. Just calm down. Review what you want to post, especially if it was out of anger. So now you've stopped being angry, but even then you've got all sorts of alerts now. Get somebody else to review it and pause for a moment. Write it and then don't post it. And then when you read it in the morning, see what it looks like. If you wrote it sober, drink a beer and then check it again. If you wrote it drunk, sober up and read it again. Some things are better written drunk. But don't post in the same state that you wrote. The third thing you want to do is just try and see the other sides. I started the presentation with the sort of left and right thing to try and show you that we've all got our reasons for our choices. There are very, very, very few people in the world who are completely psychotically deranged. And that's why they believe what they believe. Most people have a reason. And if in your mind you cannot articulate the reason for the other person's position, don't comment on it. Not yet, anyway. So therefore, be genuinely curious. If you want to post something, if you want to comment on something, comment in such a way that invites response, that indicates you are willing to engage, you are willing to listen. Now, if those four things don't work and the mob is gathering at the door, there are 10 things you can do. I'll give you a copy of the slides afterwards, but if you're taking notes, here we go quickly. The first thing is don't panic. In other words, don't respond immediately. If you feel that it's coming, your heart is racing when you hear something or read something, step away. Step away. That's what I mean by don't panic. Secondly, remember that if it's happening on the internet, people are going to be a lot more angry than they actually are. People will type things into WhatsApp and put things on Facebook that they would never say to you face to face. It's almost never as bad as you think it is. The platforms amplify the noise. The third thing, I've already said this, but I want to say it again, is see if you can understand why. Why do they want to cancel you? Why are they so angry with what you've said? And if you've got no idea, obviously you're going to have to ask somebody. Now, if you're asking questions, inviting questions, here is a 7-word question that might save your life one day, so write it down. How am I supposed to do that? There's an 8-word question that's similar. What would you like me to do? That is a huge diffuser when somebody is coming at you. I can't believe you said that. I cannot believe that a human being in 2022 would even think of smelling something like that. What would you like me to do? Now, if you go through this process and you discover, yeah, okay, I can see, I didn't intend it, but I can see why you see it the way you see it, well then, if it's appropriate, apologize. I'm not saying you should just jump to an apology to stop the noise. If you feel an apology can be put in, it's not about your intent, and please do not start your apology with, I'm sorry you feel that way. Okay, that's like putting petrol on the fire. Okay, I'm sorry you are such an idiot. The apology is, I hear what you've said, detail. I understand why you see it that way, detail. And here's what I'm going to do. Because you asked the question, what would you like me to do? Now, you don't have to do what they tell you, but an apology says, I understand what the problem is. I know why it's a problem for you, and here's what I'm going to do. Now, whether they like your apology or not, that's a different issue. I'll come in a second to show you, I'm not asking you to grovel and just apologize for the sake of it. But apologize if needed. De-escalate the emotion. Do not put emotion into your response. Do resist the urge to give a skop as you leave the room. De-escalate the emotion as much as possible. Maybe in your apology, but if you choose not to apologize, another way to respond is to say, let me tell you my story. It's easy to argue with a belief. It's easy to argue with a worldview statement. It's very difficult to argue with your story. What did you experience? What happened to you? What's your story? So feel free. This is one of the best ways to respond in a crisis. Then listen. That often means pausing. Allow the noise, allow all the comments, allow people to talk, and you just listen. Questions are useful in there. And questions that aim at understanding, at helping you to understand. And then, and here I come back to your apology and your thought of an apology. Don't try and be something you're not. I was looking for a picture to illustrate this, don't be a hypocrite, and this came across. Don't try and be something that you're not. If you're not apologetic, if you stand by your belief, sorry, I don't have to be on this side of the stage to say that. If you stand by your belief, you can stand by your belief. What you probably want to do is try and show people by telling them your story and allowing them to answer questions that you have asked that have reduced the emotion in the situation, that are questions that seek to clarify what everybody believes. If you show people what I believe will make the world a better place. Sorry, now I can be on this side as well. I believe what I believe, and I believe it will make the world a better place. And that's why I said it. If you can genuinely say that, if you genuinely believe it, then stand by it. I think most people who get cancelled are cancelled because we can see through their BS. We can see that they are frauds. They say one thing but believe another. They say one thing but mean another. Just be who you are, and if who you are is somebody who wants to make the world a better place, I think people will see that. Of course, maybe you were wrong. And by listening, you learn. And then your apology will be even better. Because it's not really an apology. It's a thanks to people for helping you learn. And the final thing that you can do, if you've said all that you've said and people are still arguing with you, is another 4 words that I think really help. I see things differently. We've discussed, we've talked, we've gone backwards and forwards. I've listened, you've heard, and I still see things differently. Thanks for the engagement. Those are your 10 things. No, that wasn't a thanks for the talk. I've got 2 more minutes. You can have divergent opinions. You don't have to find the blur middle ground that nobody's going to disagree with. You can have strong opinions in this world. Yes, even as a middle-class, middle-aged white man. You can have opinions. And if people look at your opinions, they don't have to agree with all your opinions. But if they see that what you are trying to do is build a better world, I think you'll get the credit for that. And if they see you learning in the process, you'll get the credit too. But sometimes it does cost you. My approach to life and what I do cost me my career, my first career. I, having started life as an accountant at KPMG and working in the IT sector, decided that I wanted to go into church work. I trained to be a pastor and I qualified, and in the language of our church I was ordained as a pastor. This is in the 1990s, and then began to feel that the way the church deals with gay people is not correct. And I did a lot of work. I won't bore you with the story, but I changed my mind, going from somebody who believed that gay people were going to hell to somebody who believed that gay people are created by God. And I was kicked out of my job. Lost my career, had to start again. Started to do what I do now, which is to help people understand the future of work. And that's what I've been doing for the last 20 years. Don't be scared to take a stand on something you believe. Don't be scared of the consequences of the thing you believe, especially if the thing you believe will make the world a better place, in your opinion. But that's the only opinion you've got. So use it wisely. So I hope this has been useful. You can mark yourself safe from being cancelled for today if you follow these pieces of advice. And let me finish with the words of Maya Angelou, one of my favorite poets. Do the best you can until you know better. And when you know better, do better. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Graham. Do we have any questions for Graham?
I'm sure there are no questions. This is all,
we do have a question over here, so let's waiting for the microphone.
Hi, so it's probably less of a question and more of a comment, but I do feel that the thing that should be cancelled the most is cancel culture, right? Because far too often the punishment doesn't fit the crime.
Yeah, you're right.
I mean, you look at that Katlego dude, right? So what did he do? He jailed his wife.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what he did, right? And he lost his job.
Yeah.
Now, if that was law, I'm dead sure there'd be a clone vacancies at Mutual at this point in time, because I mean, things happen,
yourself, but yes.
you know. But it's just things get taken to a point. I think, especially with the growth of social media, whereas before you just think like, yes, it was a stupid comment, but now I must react. That reaction then snowballs, then becomes popular opinion.
Yeah.
But in actual fact, it blows out to a proportion where the person isn't necessarily busy with something that you really, really care about. It's just, it's something that's offensive in trend. It's, and I think that's comedians can't be comedians anymore in some ways, in some instances. And I think the other comment also, South Africa's culture is a bit different, so than the left and the right. I think it's a fairly American kind of, because we've got a lot of, because quite often we'll think, okay, so the right is white dominated. But remember that the regional term for that is actually more conservative. There are a lot of conservative people of color. I mean, if I look at my own family, half of them are weird and scary. So I think there's more, there's left, right, up, down, north, south, east, west. And I think our culture, we probably have to unpack a lot more than we do. Yeah. To fully understand how it works in the South African demographic. Would you agree? Yeah, or no?
Yeah, so you've said a lot of things there. Let me pick out the silliest one first. Not that you said was silly, but the silliest thing I can say in response, which is if a comedian says, I'm not allowed to stand on stage and and say stuff that's funny anymore, my answer is, you weren't funny before. If the only jokes you had were jokes that used offense of certain different groups of people to get your humor, that wasn't funny. Some people might have laughed at it, that's a different story. So I'll just pick that one up because I disagree entirely. I think that there are comedians who know exactly how to get this right, and there are cheap comedians who've used cheap laughs for years, and they probably shouldn't have, and definitely shouldn't. So that we might disagree on and have a chat afterwards. But your other comments I go with. So first of all, every society, South Africa is not as unique as everything. I love it when people find black people in America to say racist things. There are racist black people in America. Thomas Sewell, what's the name? There's a woman who's on Fox News all the time. And then suddenly all the white people are saying, but look at these black people saying the things I say. Can't be racist if a black person says it. So you're absolutely right. It's not simple. It's definitely, you can't just look at somebody and say, ooh, I know which side you're on now. So there's definitely complexity. And in fact, you're absolutely right in saying there probably isn't a single person who stands in a space. ask me what the topic is, and then I'll tell you which space I'm standing in. And so we've got to be very careful of hearing somebody say one thing about one thing and say, now I know exactly which space you're in. We're all complex human beings. So, and that we 100% agree. And then your final point about cancel culture being cancelled, I think that's why the team at Old Mutual Wealth thought that this was going to be a valuable topic at the moment. Because at the moment there are people who are abusing, maybe that is the right word. We'd probably agree on abusing the power of social media. Because there's no editors, there's no filters, and as soon as you latch onto a hashtag, you've now got millions of people who can join you. By the way, exactly the same thing happened after the invention of the printing press. In the first 20 years after the invention of the printing press, the main thing that was printed were things called tracts. And tracts were basically people who had a little bit of money who were able to go and print stuff about their opponents. And if you go and have a look at the history of the printing press, you will see there were millions of pieces of paper printed, mainly people bitching about each other. Genuinely, I mean, Martin Luther, the famous Christian reformer, was one of the worst in terms of the stuff he wrote about some of his people that he considered to be cancelable. I think that's what happens when a new technology emerges. We don't know how to use it. We don't know what the guardrails and the boundaries are, and I think we're in a bit of the Wild West time at the moment. And so, yeah, I agree with you that cancel culture is a problem in itself. And that maybe we should tone that down. If I'm saying remove the emotion from it, it should be call-out culture. We just say, hey, that wasn't cool. Yeah. But should we then light the torches and run up and try and burn his place down? Maybe that's going too far. But if you follow the 10 things I suggested, if some of the people who have been cancelled in the last few years had followed the 10 things I suggest they wouldn't have been cancelled. I think a lot of these people have been cancelled because they threw fuel on the fire when the fire had been started. Sorry, long answer, but great questions.
Maybe just a question from me on that. So often you do share a story online, but then you get these trolls who will always try and find something to trigger you with or make a comment with. Should you just ignore those people, or should you respond? What do you think would be the correct?
It's a great question. So if they just once-offs, you can check. So your first check is, does this look like a real human being? You just click through to their account. Many of them you can see. This is not an actual human being. You have to accept that there are a lot of troll and bot accounts, as they're called. And then, in my opinion, just delete the comment. However, if you see it's a real human being, I'm always in favor of engaging rather than just deleting. So you don't want to censor somebody, you want to engage with them. So I would typically put a question for clarification. Can I just understand that? Did you really mean this? Are you really asking me that? Do you really believe this? And see if you get engagement. If all you get is another troll comment coming back, now your choice is you can just delete again the original, or you can engage with the person to say, it looks as if you're not really doing this in good faith. I do a lot of work in the background. I contact people privately and I say, please remove your comment, or here's your final warning, or whatever. And then the last resort, of course, is just to block them. And I think that sadly, because cancel culture is a big thing at the moment, you've probably got to block a few people. Even if you have a view like I do, I'd rather engage. But, give people a chance to prove that you misunderstood them first, and then take it from there.
All right. Great. Well, thank you very much, Graham. We have to wrap up with
Thank
that.
you.
So, cancel culture. Thank you. Cancel culture only really gained popularity like around the late 2019s, and it's already had a massive global impact. So it is something that we need to consider every day in our engagements with clients and our co-workers. And just like that, the advice forum is also cancelled. We've reached the end of the day, and all that is left for me is to thank each and every person and avatar that made this day possible. So we started the day by looking at how the world of work is evolving, and Hal George spoke to us about how we need to be prepared for this new digital world that we're getting immersed in. And Sharon and Stephen reminded us how important those authentic and real connections with our clients really are. And then also reminded us how to spot and avoid a lot of the corporate deception out there. And then the business coaches reminded us of how we need to look and see the threats and then also respond to the threats in our business and build a resilient practice. And then Graham reminded us that even the most resilient practice can so easily be cancelled. So thank you very much for attending. We also really appreciate your feedback. In the room, you will find QR codes on the tables. Please use your smartphones to scan those QR codes and just answer 4 questions for us. We will also share this with the audience at home. We really value your feedback, especially in terms of our planning for future events. Once again, thank you very much for attending, and goodbye. Remember to sign out so that you can get your CPD points. So please do. Thank you very much.